About a month ago, I was up home visiting Mom in Wapakoneta, and I decided to take a walk out in our woods during the nighttime. And I was just amazed at the beautiful stars that just shone so brightly, stars that don't often see up here in Dayton with all the busy lights of the city going on. How long has it been since you stopped and looked up at the stars in the night sky? Stars have a way of lifting us beyond the boundaries and the limits of this world, that we might contemplate with wonder and awe God's creative plan for our world and for our lives. Stars have a way of reassuring us that in the midst of darkness, in the midst of the challenges of life, the hand of God is with us, holding all things together. In today's gospel, the Magi followed a star that caught their attention at its rising, and their commitment to follow that star led them to Jesus, the true light of the world. You might say they're the true stars of today's feast, because the Magi responded to God's call and humbled themselves in the presence of the Lord. Like the people in the time of the prophet Isaiah, we can get stuck in a rut. We can become lost in self-pity. We can become depressed by the darkness we experience around us. When this happens, we are focused on the material things we need to live on, rather than focusing on what we need to live for. What we need to live on means we are caught up with the challenges of meeting our worldly needs. But what is most important in life is knowing what we're living for, because this is what gives meaning and purpose in life. The Feast of Epiphany reminds us that God desires that we live for Him alone. All too often we can get lost amid the stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, or get lost as we gaze tirelessly at the light of our iPhone for hours on end, or get lost following the light beam of the latest fad or rumor or political drama. When trying to get our attention from these false lights, God will use ordinary things and ordinary people to help wake us up. Think of Moses tending the sheep in the burning bush, or Elijah hearing God in a tiny, whispering sound at the entrance of the cave, or Ananias going to Saul, who was a murderer, to speak to him a word from the Lord. In the story of the Nativity, God uses a new star to get the attention of the Magi. Now, even though they were foreign Gentiles, God was calling the Magi to begin a journey of conversion. As Gentiles, they were not familiar with the Jewish scripture or traditions, and so it must have come as a surprise to them that the Jewish leaders were not excited about the news of the birth of a newborn king. And what's even more striking is that after giving them the location of his birth, the Jewish leaders showed no interest in going with the Magi to see the king. They stayed in Jerusalem. This raises a point. Did you notice that it seems the star that guided the Magi went away while they were in Jerusalem? Today's passage says that after the Magi met with King Herod and the chief priests and the scribes, behold, the star that they had seen at his rising now preceded them until it came and stopped at the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star. Why would they have been overjoyed at seeing the star if it had been with them all the time? They must have lost the star while in Jerusalem. Symbolically, this says that those who should have been open to the light of Christ in Jerusalem were closed to God. They lived in the darkness of their own personal convictions. Maybe the religious leaders had sided with Herod and his brutal, selfish acts and could no longer hear God's voice or see the signs that God was giving. Ask yourself, are there times when I'm a believer in name only? When my actions and my behavior do not reflect what I believe, what I've learned from God? If those times are there, those are times of darkness. We're not being guided by the light of Christ. Finally, when the Magi get to the house of the newborn King of the Jews, they prostrate themselves, meaning they literally fell down in worship. Their response was one of faith, and the gifts they offered are symbolic of their belief. The gift of gold that was given is given as one of the most precious of metals, and it anticipated the crown of gold that this newborn king would wear. As our King, we have come to identify Jesus as the true treasure of our lives. Presenting the gift of frankincense. Frankincense is a sweet incense that was used in the temple for worship and sacrifice. It is an appropriate gift for the priest. The word priest comes from the Latin word pontifex, which literally means bridge builder. Jesus is the bridge between heaven and earth. As the eternal high priest, Jesus intercedes for us at the right hand of the Father. Then the gift of myrrh, an aromatic sap that is added to oil, which was used to anoint the kings and to prepare a body for burial. This child, who is the Son of God, has come into the world to give his life to save us from sin and death. The gift of his sacrifice, the outpouring of his precious blood, reveals the depth of God's unconditional love for us. In his life, we receive life everlasting. Today, the light of Christ has led you to this church, that you may come into the presence of Jesus in this Holy Eucharist. What gift have you brought for the Christ child? Maybe you brought a commitment to put God first. Maybe it's a commitment to be more aware of what you're living for in life. Maybe your gift is a commitment to get rid of a bad habit that it continually leads you into darkness. Maybe the gift you bring is an olive branch of peace for a broken relationship. The gift God desires from us is a gift that comes from our heart, a gift that reveals the light of Christ to others in the world. As we enter this new year, be aware of the stars in your life that God is using to lead you to Jesus, the true light to the world. We are blessed to encounter Jesus Christ in the gift of his body and blood that we will share today. And so, don't look down, look up. Look up and see the glory of the Lord. Let the light of the Lord shine through you, so that you can be like the wise ones that Daniel the prophet spoke of when he said, "Those who lead many to justice will shine like the stars in the sky."